Well, as a heatwave continues to bring high temperatures across several provinces, the rolling blackouts mean many South Africans have not even been able to cool off indoors after stage 6 was implemented suddenly yesterday. Eskom reducing the cuts to stage 4 at midday today. Let's speak to the MD of EE Business Intelligence, Chris Yelland. Chris, thank you for being with us as always. Eskom mentioning the weather again, and it is a heat wave, but you've pointed out that in winter there are cold snaps, in summer hot spells. Should we accept the weather as an excuse for higher levels?
No, it shouldn't be an excuse, but it is a reality that the weather does impact the demand for electricity on the one hand, as well as the supply of electricity, the capacity that is available on the other. So, for example, in the heat wave that we're currently experiencing, 4 of Eskom's largest power stations, that is Majuba, Matimba, Medupi and Kusile, have less cooling available because they are so-called dry air-cooled power stations. So when the air is very hot, as it is at the moment, one finds that the output of these generators has to reduce because the cooling is not adequate. There's not enough cold air to cool the power stations adequately, so they have to reduce output. So it does influence the output, but a power system should be resilient enough to handle the normal vagaries of the weather. And I'm not really talking about national disasters such as damage to infrastructure caused by a cyclone or floods or a snowstorm or that, but the normal vagaries of hot and cold weather, windy weather, dry weather, cloudy weather. The system should be resilient enough to cater for that. The problem is we don't have sufficient generation reserve capacity. That means when they have a shutdown to do maintenance, for example, there is not a spare generator that they can operate, while they're doing that maintenance, and therefore one has to use available generation and load shedding in order to match supply and demand.
Eskom has been saying, I guess, for years that the system is not resilient. Like you say, it should be. It is fragile. Many plants need to be upgraded because they're reaching the end of their lives. But can we say whatever is being done seems to be problematic, perhaps, with so many unplanned outages? That's also an issue, and stations going down together. I am aware that the issue at Majuba, Letaba, Tutuka, all boiler tube leaks, so the same issue across several stations.
Look, I have no doubt that the people at Eskom and Eskom Generation are doing all that they can. They are working hard on the problems, but unfortunately, the reality is that when you have these aging power plants that have been abused in the past and poorly maintained, they are reaching end of life, and at some point one really needs new generation capacity to replace this poorly performing old capacity. Just to give you an example, no amount of regular maintenance is going to sort out boiler tube leaks. Boiler tube leaks are a sign of erosion of the tubes caused by overuse and poor quality of coal, and ultimately you wait for these things to leak, you do a shutdown and you repair them as best you can, and then you switch back on again. But it's not a case that you can, during a maintenance outage, change all the boiler tubes. And there are areas within the several kilometers of boiler tubes that are severely eroded and are a significant risk, and there's really little that one can do about this other than to wait for them to leak and then to repair them as best one can. This is the sign of old power plants, poorly maintained, abused, and poor coal quality. All of this leads to this erosion of boiler tubes, and this is been pointed out as 50% of the outages, the unplanned outages at Eskom, are resulting from boiler tube leaks.
Wow, if only they didn't make better boiler tubes. But like you say, a sign of how old the system is. So Eskom suggesting there's going to be a pattern from tomorrow. Stage 3 at 5 o'clock in the morning, ramping up to stage 4 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What's your sense of what we can expect, that pattern for how long and then going into Christmas?
Nobody can actually say, least of all Eskom. They may have some plans or predictions, but we have learned the hard way that their plans and predictions very often don't pan out. The point is, unplanned breakdowns are by their nature unplanned and unpredictable. So whilst one can have a plan to bring certain units back on stream by a certain date, one can't have a plan as to what units are going to break down thereafter or while you're bringing them on. So I think one must treat with the greatest of caution predictions, over the next week, over the next month, over the next year. We've learned time and time again that these predictions really cannot be relied upon. So, for example, politicians of all kinds, from the president to the Secretary General of the ANC to ministers, have all said that we're going to have no more load shedding, from the end of December. This is just political posturing before an election.
Maybe political hoping before an election. So Chris, and one of the people caught off guard seems to be the electricity minister. You've expressed confidence in him before. Are you still happy? My final question, with the work that is being done and the people that are in charge of that work, at least do you believe they're doing their best to get us out of this black hole?
Yes, I do. I think the advantage that the minister brings to the table, and I've said this before, is that here we have a single person who has been given a responsibility and is being held accountable for ending load shedding. Now, whilst this is a really difficult task, and one can sense his frustration during the media briefings that things are not necessarily going easily, I think it is important that we do have one person accountable. He brings a new energy to the problem, a new sense of urgency, and as I say, this accountability, and he's able to cross the different silos of government, whether it is the presidency, DPE, DMRE, DFFE, COGTA, National Treasury, Eskom itself, NERSA, municipalities, and even the private sector. He's able to cross these boundaries. That is his job, and to coordinate a national plan to end load shedding. It is a difficult plan, and it's not simply a case of fixing Eskom. The reality is we need new generation capacity, and we need a person like the Minister of Electricity to be able to bang heads with the different ministers, with Eskom and the other stakeholders involved to bring new capacity onto the board fast. That really is the big problem at the moment. New generation capacity is not coming on fast enough. The private sector, I believe, is playing a huge role, bringing on rooftop solar PV, battery energy storage, domestic, commercial, agricultural sector. Those are the quick wins, but the big public procurements are way too slow. The IRP is not coming on board, and many of the procurements, like the risk mitigation IPP program, have simply not delivered what we expected.
All right, thank you very much. The MD of EE Business Intelligence, Chris Yelland.